Hello and welcome to Film Fridays here on the Digital Revolution. Today we're going to be showcasing our movie,
The Home of My Choice,
which is an artwork and film that we made back in 2020. The artwork takes place in Brownington, Vermont, which was where Alexander Twilight lived and where he built a school and was a minister. But what's significant about Alexander Twilight is he's the first person of color to graduate from a U.S. university here in Vermont. It was Middlebury University.
Middlebury College.
Middlebury College. And then he also was the first person of color to serve in a U.S. State House. But it took so we were there for a week camping in Brownington, photographing like crazy with this camera, which I'll get into in just a second. And then Eve did extensive research.
I worked with the folks at the Old Stone House Museum, and they were wonderful and very helpful to give me background information, historical documents, a lot of text to work with, talking about the history of Alexander Twilight, the school that he founded in Brownington, Vermont, reminiscences from his students, because he was also a teacher. He was a man of many talents.
Yes.
And this artwork talks about Alexander Twilight, but as you'll see in the film, it also delves really deep into the ways that Alexander Twilight has been used by different people throughout history to tell different stories, depending on what somebody's motivation might be.
Right, and I think it's a really, I love this movie personally. It was one of my favorite movies to make. So let's quickly talk about the cameras that I used. This was all shot with the Linhof 617. 617 S3. This is the most current, last version of the 617
It's a big-ass camera.
It's a big-ass camera. I've got three amazing lenses for it. This is a 180, this is a 90 XL, and this is a 72. All three lenses were used in the creation of the film. Movie, to me, represents the perfect kit. If you're into panoramic, it's kind of hard not to like a Linhof 617, except for the price. They're quite pricey. It's the oldest camera manufacturer in the world is Linhof. They're all die cast. They're just incredibly well built.
It looks like it would be heavy.
It's very heavy. I hand hold this all the time for shooting. Each lens has its own custom viewfinder, which are terrifyingly expensive, but really beautiful to look through. I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous, but they're very expensive. I had on my Linhof a custom piece made right here. And what this is a Voigtlander rangefinder at the bottom so I can get my distances. And on top it has a light meter. I had a custom bracket made for it. The helical focusing mount on these cameras are so smooth, and the actual measurements are absolutely perfect. This particular model has a dark slide, and the dark slide comes out, change a lens mid-roll. Yeah. So I can go between any of the different lenses because they have the dark slide. Earlier models did not have that.
I was trying to say, this looks like a very bulky setup.
Yeah, this is not my everyday carry-around camera as much as I wish it was. It's just a little too much weight. If I have the camera with like a 72 on it, it's not bad. That is something that I have walked around New Orleans and other cities with for the whole day. But all three lenses as a kit, this is something I take when we're going to do a project somewhere, and I know I need
You'll be in one place.
Yeah.
You're going to have access to a bunch of stuff, whether it's in the car or...
And yeah, because I wheel this around like either on a backpack or on a wheelie backpack. And it's a lot to carry, but when you look at the negatives, when you see a 617 negative from really some of the best lenses ever produced, it's so sharp, it's so clean, it's so three-dimensional. It's a real joy to work with. I've also worked with the 612 version of the Linhof. I've owned a couple of them over the years as well. The 617 just sort of felt better to me. I like that aspect ratio. So yeah, 617 Linhof. If you have any questions about the Linhof, about the lenses, definitely put them in the comments. If you have not subscribed to this channel, subscribe. That's you I'm talking to. And anything else?
I think it's we should mention that you shot vertical.
Yes, the entire movie is shot vertically as opposed to horizontally.
Well, the artwork, the panels and the artwork.
Right, are all vertical.
Yeah.
And I did that also in A Wonderful Plague with a 624 camera. I like vertical panoramics. They're difficult to do, but when you take multiple ones and put it together, it creates a really interesting sort of energy that really wouldn't be the same if they were just horizontal images. The images that are in the movie were all printed on a mate. A mate is one of the rarest, oldest papers. It's 3,000 years old. It's made in central Mexico. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful paper. And it adds also to the dimensional quality of the images, which you'll see in the movie.
All right. So without further ado, The Home of My Choice. 1795, Alexander Twilight is born in Corinth, Vermont, the third of 6 children. His parents are Ichabod and Mary Twilight. Corinth town records reportedly describe the couple as, quote, both colored and, quote, the first Negroes to settle in Corinth. According to oral history, Ichabod was a mulatto, and Mary was either a quadroon or white. In the 1800 census, the Twilights are listed under the racially ambiguous category all other free persons, which included free blacks, unaffiliated Native Americans, or other people of color. 1877. One of the earliest accounts of Twilight's life is published by the Reverend Farren. Twilight's wife, Mercy, is still alive for another year. There is no mention made of Twilight's race or ethnicity. This is the home of my choice, and here, with the blessing of God, I will devote myself to the interests of education. Alexander Twilight. Circa 1803 to 1810. For reasons unknown, Alexander's father deeds the farm to his eldest son Aaron and leaves the family. Soon after, at the age of 8, Alexander becomes an indentured servant for a neighboring farm, where he will work for the next 12 years. At the age of 20, Twilight begins his formal education, attending grammar school for the next 6 years. Meanwhile, following the departure of Ichabod, the family's racial status has changed. They will be listed in the censuses of 1810, 1830, and 1840 as white. Circa 1880s. Student reminiscences of Twilight are published, describing him as a beloved teacher and mentor with a ready sense of humor. Some also describe how he looked, using adjectives like swarthy and bronzed. There would certainly be psychological and economic reasons that as soon as you could pass for white, that you would do so. Elise Guyette. (1821). Alexander Twilight is admitted to Middlebury College as a third-year student. He graduates in 1823, one of 18 men to receive his B.A. More than a decade later, Middlebury would deny acceptance to applicant Andrew Harris on the basis of a, quote, policy against accepting Negroes. Circa 1900. Middlebury College Dean Walter E. Howard, who graduated from Middlebury 48 years after Twilight's graduation, is quoted as being aware Twilight was, quote, a Negro. I cannot with certainty identify the first college to admit black students, or to admit a single black student. It is even hard to gain consensus on which African American was the first to receive a college degree. David Pilgrim. (1829). After working as a teacher and minister in various locations in New England, and having married Mercy Ladd Merrill a white woman from New Hampshire, Twilight is offered the job of principal of the Orleans County Grammar School in Brownington, Vermont. He will serve as the local minister as well. 1951. National Life of Vermont uses the story of Alexander Twilight in an ad for the Saturday Evening Post. It compares its insurance agents to the persona of Twilight, driven by Vermont ideals of, quote, perseverance, thrift, honesty, and foresight. A painted illustration depicts Twilight on a remote hilltop with rolled-up sleeves, chiseling away at a granite block. In the painting, he is white. The present is conditioned by the past. However, that does not mean that the present is like the past. Professor Bill Hart. (1834 to 1836). Despite a lack of support from the school board, Twilight commences work on an imposing 4-story granite school dormitory, which still stands to this day. No records survive to tell us about the construction or where the financing came from, but local legend has it that Twilight builds the structure single-handedly with only the help of an ox and a pulley he made himself. Twilight names the structure Athenian Hall, although it comes to be commonly known as the Old Stone House. 1965. An article in the Middlebury College newspaper is headlined, "20 Negroes Apply for Admission to the Class of '69." This is up from a single application 3 years earlier. In the first 165 years of the institution's history, fewer than 20 graduates were Black. The first African American to graduate from a U.S. college or university? We claim him in Vermont, Middlebury College claims him, and then we look at the historical record, and it's unclear whether race was an issue at all in his lifetime or how he viewed it. I mean, are we co-opting this history to twist it into something for our benefit after the fact? Jane Lindholm. (1836). Seeking to influence a key vote on school funding, Twilight is elected to the Vermont House of Representatives. It is also in this period that the only known photograph of Twilight is taken, a daguerreotype that shows the educator in a 3-piece suit holding a quill to paper. 1974. In the wake of the Civil Rights Movement, the Middlebury College newsletter publishes The Iron-Willed Black Schoolmaster and His Granite Academy, asserting that Alexander Twilight was the first Negro American college graduate, predating Edward Jones, Amherst College of 1826. My concern is that I hear you all on the radio talking about Alexander Twilight and the rich African American history here in Vermont. I'm just seeing that every year white people talk about African American history like we don't exist in the state. You all need to stop. Shirley Boyd Hill. (1847). Twilight leaves Brownington following an apparent disagreement with the Orleans County School Board. He moves with Mercy to Quebec, where he continues to teach. He is 52 years old. 1980. Vermont's Black population accounts for 0.2% of the population. This is the same figure as 1970, up from 0.1% in 1960. This is despite Vermont's progressive reputation as the first state to have abolished slavery, and one that never cooperated with, quote, slave catchers, or returned people running away from slavery. Being comfortable with his racial ambiguity is something that we need to come to terms with today. Professor Bill Hart. (1851). 4 years after Twilight's departure, the school is forced to close. The school, which is now known as Brownington Academy, remains shuttered for 3 terms, at which point the board asks Twilight to return as headmaster and minister, which he does. 1986. Middlebury College purchases and renovates an 1867 grammar school, renaming it Twilight Hall. Our country is like a really old house. Old houses need a lot of work, and the work is never done. And that's what our country is like. And you may not want to go into that basement, but if you really don't go into that basement, it's at your own peril. And I think that whatever you are ignoring is not going to go away. Isabel Wilkerson. (1855). Alexander Twilight suffers a stroke, leaving him partially paralyzed. He continues to teach until, in 1857, Twilight dies. 2020. Vermont's General Assembly passes a resolution designating Wednesday, September 23, 2020 as Alexander Twilight Day. The resolution is announced on Juneteenth, the annual day commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. In the resolution, it is stated that Twilight is, quote, the nation's first African-American college graduate. The gospel I so long preached was my support in affliction, my sure hope in death. Twilight's epitaph.